You are looking at the portrait of Giese, a not too well known piece of art from the Renaissance. Here Hans Holbein portrays George Giese the merchant with great detail in the corner of his London office. There are multiple Renaissance styles and techniques used that make this portrait what it is. The portrait of Giese best reflects the value of worldliness during the Renaissance because of the objects in the background and experienced portrayal of his life. Worldliness is the focus on the world around us, materialism and money. As you can tell, there are a number of significant objects surrounding the sitter, which I will address later. The purpose of almost all of these objects is to show off to his viewers his wealth and character. George Giese was quite a rich person, employed as a Hanseatic merchant from Gdańsk. His power was demonstrated through his position as a trader, being one of the leading men in London's Stahlhof, a very powerful trade base. This figure is not only an experienced merchant, but a proper materialistic European man, proving this painting is focused on worldliness. Moving to the creator side of the story, Hans Holbein was an interesting man. Planning to make his career of a painter in Basel, he spent much of his life traveling around Europe for different opportunities. Around 1527, he painted for the court of Henry VIII, making portraits of several members of the royal family, including King Henry VIII himself. Hans Holbein is also known for one of his many portraits, The Ambassadors. Later, in 1532 to be exact, Holbein took the time to paint this portrait of George. Some think it was in the anticipation of his wedding in Danzig, his birthplace, possibly a gift for his bride. Knowing the patron, a financial supporter for painting, of the portrait of King Henry VIII was the king, we can conclude George Giese supported Holbein, especially since he was a wealthy merchant. I think he might have some money to spare. Hans Holbein went on to paint for several others, totaling the creation of over 150 portraits in the last 11 years of his life. Going in depth of what the painting really consists of, you can tell that the objects around the merchant reflect his personality. Looking at the table on the right of the painting, you can see a pair of scissors, a quill with ink, a signet ring, a tin money container, a candlestick, and some other things. These give evidence that he was a merchant having to write many contracts, keep record, and store money. The small table clock on the left part of the table acts as a symbol, a reminder of the passage of time. Also, next to the clock, there are flowers in a Venetian glass vase, a bit wilted. This represents two things. One being that carnations were a sign of engagement, two being the wilted flowers represent the shortness of life. To add on, the fragility of the vase represents that even the most beautiful things in life do not last forever. Moving on to some of the other objects, in top left we can see there is a book, things hanging from the shelf that look from that time period, and a motto written by Giese on the wall next to the coin scale. This says, Nulla sine mirore voluptas, which means no joy without sorrow. This might tell us something about Gise's life and personality. Also, to the left of the book, there is a Latin poem. It translates to, "This John on George Gise's picture, that what you see is George's picture, showing his features, how vivid his eyes are, and how his cheek is formed, in his 34th year of age, AD 1532. Now on the right side, there is a wooden box, a book, possibly a journal of some sort, signet rings, keys, and a sphere ornament. On it, I believe it says "Here N," which could possibly mean two different things. The first being it might be religious, since the word "here" in Dutch means Lord. However, the ball could also have to do with marriage, since there was anticipation of his marriage, and in Dutch, "Heer en mevrouw" means Mr. and Mrs. Much of this painting has many hidden meanings. The last of the majority of the objects would consist of the letters on the side wall. These were most likely trade letters for his job. Something that catches your eye when further observing this portrait is what he is doing in his hands. It looks like he is actually in the process of writing a letter, holding a quill in his right hand. According to Web Gallery of Art, the letter is actually a document to his brother in Germany. The last of the in-depth picture analyzing has to do with his clothing. He appears to be wearing some type of black coat with a big red shirt and a white undershirt, along with a hat. All of these pieces of clothing must have been worth a lot. This particular painting has many Renaissance aspects to it. As you can see, George Gise's body makes a triangular shape, a style that was often used around that time. The way he is turned and his profile reminds me a lot about the Mona Lisa. Her positioning was much like how Giese chose to present himself. Also, the painting most definitely has correct proportion and vitality of life, just as if you were to snap your fingers and you would take a breath. Finally, the portrait of Giese was an oil on oak panel painting. One could possibly argue that this painting has an individualism theme to it because it focuses not only on the person but his personal belongings and job, plus the fact there are many symbols. From all of the Renaissance aspects of this portrait and the fact it was created after the beginning of the Renaissance and at the start of the Northern Renaissance, we can conclude that it was influenced by the Renaissance movement. To be more precise, Hans Holbein was influenced by new techniques coming out of Italy. There is no doubt in my mind that this creation from Hans Holbein represents worldliness because of how George Gise's life is shown and the objects surrounding him. Also, with all of the confusing and hidden symbols and unique styles, this really is a true Renaissance work of art.